Hello everyone. In today's video, we are shifting our attention to the Karpov Poikovsky Tournament in Russia, as Magnus Carlsen has already won the Altibox Norway Chess with a round to spare. So far, 8 rounds have been played in this Poikovsky Tournament, and the leader is Dmitry Jakovenko on 5 points, and on a close second, Artemiev and Fedoseev on 4.5 points. And round 9 is going to be the final round of this event. So we will be looking at a game played by Artemiev against Korobov from round 4. Artemiev is one of the rising stars in the chess world, and Korobov, on the other hand, has a great deal of experience, and he plays with an aggressive style. So Artemiev had the white pieces. He opens with the English opening. e6 from Korobov, g3, bishop, knight to f6, bishop g2, pawn d5. Knight f3, bishop e7, both sides castled, pawn to b3, and here pawn to d4. So black decides to keep these 2 central pawns. And with white hinting at bishop b2, makes sense just to blunt out that bishop. So e3, c5, pawn takes, rook e1, knight c6, bishop b2. So the one issue with Korobov's position is his bad bishop on c8. With that being said, rook e8 seems very logical, just preparing for a potential e5. But in this position, we see bishop d6 from Korobov. So bishop d6 also aims to push e5, but it gives up a central pawn in knight takes d4. Korobov, of course, saw this, but he had calculated an aggressive line. So bishop takes g3 regains the pawn. And here knight to g4. And knight g4 is a novelty. Previously the move a6 and rook d8 have been played. So with knight to g4, black is threatening this on f2, and it looks like black is doing pretty okay in this position, as he will soon play e5 and liberate the bishop. But in reality, black is the one that has to be a little bit cautious, as he is behind in development. And here a good move from Artemiev, queen to f3, using that lead in development and threatening to win a piece with rook to e4. Now if queen takes d2, then white goes knight to e4, attacking the queen and also preventing the queen from going to g5, which would defend the knight. White will win a piece, but black can of course win a piece back with the move f5. But his structure will be compromised, and white is better in this position. So if pawn to e5, giving protection to this knight, since it opens up the bishop, then simple rook a to d1, protecting d2. White's pieces are nicely centralized, and black will soon be pushed back with moves like rook to e4, and white is better. So with f5, this runs into queen d5 check, and here pawn to f3 wins a pawn. And white is much better due to his active pieces. So after queen to f3, Korobov played pawn to f5, protecting his knight and also controlling this square, stopping rook to e4. So here rook a to d1 is a good move, simply centralizing the pieces. But Artemiev opted for the move knight to b5, also a decent choice. What happens if queen takes d2? Then here knight c7, rook b8, take on e6. And white is to be preferred here because of his more active pieces. There's pressure on b7. The rook could come to the 7 rank. White can also bring the other rook into the game with tempo on the queen. And if necessary, this rook on e6 can always drop back to give some extra protection to f2. So we see queen b6 from Korobov, and Artemiev plays a strong move, queen to f4, with a few ideas. For one, white is preparing to play the move d4. Artemiev has also unblocked his bishop, allowing for some tactical possibilities. For example, let's make a waiting move. Let's say h6, then knight to c7. And now rook captures e6 with a great position for white. And this rook on e6 is immune because if queen takes rook, then bishop d5 wins the queen. So let's go back, queen f4. Korobov defended against both of these threats of d4 and playing knight c7 and capturing here with e5. Now if white were to retreat his queen, say queen to f3, then he loses the initiative. Black might even be better after bishop d7 with ideas of placing the bishop on the long diagonal. Black also has options of swinging his queen over to h6 in some lines. So here we see the move rook captures on e5 from Artemiev, keeping the initiative. Bishop d7, and now knight d6. So the queen and knight are potent attacking units here. And black is in a bit of trouble as he is slightly exposed on this diagonal. And white has more than enough compensation as he also has this very strong light square bishop pointing at b7. And you can imagine that if white were to establish this strong knight on d6, this monster knight on d6 with a move like c5, then he would have a dominating position as this knight controls so many key squares. It attacks b7, controls f7, also controls the entry points for the rooks. So here bishop c6 played by Korobov. We have bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, and now queen to e6 check. King h8, and now knight to f7 check. That has to be taken to avoid smothered mate because of king g8. Knight f7 checkmate. So here, rook takes f7. Artemiev regains material. So what's the material count? White is up a pawn in this position, and he is also attacking f5. So Korobov played queen to e4. So how does white convert this position? Well, there are two things going for Artemiev. For one, black's back rank is pretty weak, and white also has this protected pass d-pawn. So a simple idea would be to play rook d1 with the idea of pushing the pawn. So if queen to e2, you simply move the rook away, and the next move is going to be pawn to d4. And if queen takes d2, queen takes b7, queen takes a7 with 3 connected passers, this is winning. So another idea is to play pawn to d4, simply wanting to push d5. And if queen captures, then rook to e1, and this is similar to what happened in the game. So in the game, Artemiev played d3, which also works. So now rook e1, threatening a back rank mate with rook e8. Therefore, pawn to h6, and now Artemiev simply grabbed the pawn, and he grabbed another pawn with 3 connected passers. This is winning for white without much difficulties. Black tried f4, a last hope for counterplay, but Artemiev defends this without much difficulties. Queen to e7, hitting the rook. I'll just play this out till the end. And now king g2 by Artemiev. White consolidates, and in this position, Anton Korobov resigned. Very well played game by Vladislav Artemiev. So he will face his fellow countryman Fedoseev in the final round for a shot at first place. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.